So it's Wednesday night, sort of. Yeah, it's been a while. Been since last July, I guess. My guests tonight are Richard William Smith and Linda Maria Smith. And as you know, my background is archaeology, anthropology, and believe it or not, there's a huge disparity in definition or form and function when anthropologists describe culture, define culture, or try to define culture. Can we describe it in a sentence, in a paragraph, or does it take a lifetime to describe the concept or paradigm? Richard and Linda Smith are both students of human origin. And can we start there? Because I think that's what's so confusing about us, not just us three, but us in general. So I want to talk about where did we come from, and because I think it's very confusing to most people. And that's why we have so many different beliefs and religions and ideas where we came from and where did we come from. It's the chicken and the egg thing. We had to come from somewhere or something, but where did that place or thing start? Where did it come from? So let's attack this at any angle you both prefer, because you both study who we are and our relationships with the universe and those other relationships that have shaped us since the beginning. So the Smiths are here. Who wants to go first? Let's start with you, ma'am, because ladies first, and welcome to the show. Thank you so much. It's great to see you.
Yes, thank
I've
you
been
for
reading
having us.
reading and wondering about you. I want to hear about it.
So to answer that question, or to start off with that, what you said, I had that nagging feeling in me for the longest time. The story of where I or my family came from just didn't sit right with me. I heard maybe this much of the truth, and then everybody that I can ask or could have asked are all now deceased. So I started digging myself. I started doing family tree on Ancestry, and then I finally bit the bullet and I got a DNA test done. And to my surprise, there was a lot more in me than what I was told. And it blew my mind. So if we take a look at just my DNA alone, which is pretty much spread across the entire world, it's almost every continent, every country is in my DNA. That makes me wonder, what about interplanetary DNA? What if we could do that? When maybe we'd really find where we came from.
So when you started thinking about this in terms of where you first came from, I mean, obviously prior to getting a DNA test, what was the question? I mean, there's so many people out there who struggled. You know, we talk about finding ourselves, and that's super, super common. However, that means so many different things to so many different people. Was it that kind of a question that started out, or was it deeper?
Growing up, I've heard a couple of people ask me, well, where are you from, or where your family's from? You look Greek, or you look Middle Eastern, or you don't look Spanish. And I grew up in a majority of a Spanish household. I'm fluent in Spanish. And I kept saying, well, what do Spanish people look like? I mean, you go to every Spanish country, everybody looks a little bit different. You know, I think people just assume that because I'm Spanish, I'm supposed to look Mexican. I'm not sure. And it just, the history, or the story that I was told from my grandfather just didn't seem complete. And then he passed away in 96, so I really couldn't ask him anything. And then my parents passed away, and my grandmother passed away. There's nobody to ask that really knows the history of our family.
So what you heard from him, was it sort of a conventional family history that we would kind of all hear a little bit of that?
It was his side of the family somehow originated in Genoa, Italy. Then they migrated to the Basque region of Spain, and then from there they went to Colombia, and from there they went to Cuba, and that's where my grandfather was born, in Cuba. but it just,
And there seems to be like a concrete embedded resistance to going beyond
Yeah.
those boundaries.
yeah, that's
To go beyond the norm.
Yeah,
right.
right. Like we're Cuban, we're royalty,
We're-
that's it.
yeah.
We don't want to hear anything else.
I couldn't get past that. Like and I even tried on Ancestry looking for my grandfather's family, because I have a very unique last name. My maiden name is Ruiz de Zárate. If you have that last name, we're all related, because it's not like Smith, which is our last name. Just hundreds and thousands of us.
There's a couple.
Yeah, you
A
know,
couple of
Couple
us,
of
yeah.
Smiths.
just a few.
I know one. Do you know him? His name's
So I
Mm.
started digging, and I can just go back so far with that Ruiz de Zárate last name.
And it comes from the Basque
It comes
region,
from the Basque region. Yes.
which is a very mysterious dialect and origin itself.
Right.
That does not belong to Europe.
So let's just digress just for a minute here. And so why are the Basque considered so unusual? I mean, what would be the main reason that they're considered unusual? Because I think they are.
They have the linguistic researchers have yet to figure out where that language, they call it a language isolate, I think, or something.
Right.
Yeah.
They cannot connect it to any other languages.
It's not part of,
It's
it's
not
not
part
part
of
of the traditional Latin
No,
base or
It's
anything.
not.
It is so different. In fact, if you recently, Netflix has even introduced Basque produced movies.
Yeah.
Bilingual, you can watch them in English, you
But
can watch them in Spanish, you can watch them in Basque.
Yeah.
But when you look at the Basque subtitles or the Spanish subtitles, they are night and day. There is
Yeah.
no similarity there. So, not even with France, and Basque shares the border on France and Spain. They are fiercely nationalistic to their own heritage.
Yeah, they don't like to be called Spaniards or Spanish.
There
They're
has
Basque.
been ongoing civil war there because they refuse to bend to Spain or France's rule. Mostly
Well, they're
Spain.
kind of stuck with it right now. I mean,
Yeah.
you look at the map and it says Spain. It doesn't say anything about Basque.
You
It
look-
says Basque region. That's it.
You look at the Basque people, it's very much like looking at the history of Ireland or Native Americans or,
Which they have genetically linked the Celtics to the Basques.
yeah, the Celtics,
So
yeah.
I found that very interesting doing my research.
This is
so-
what happens with your ancestry.
You know, the further I dig into my DNA results and my ancestry, I ask myself even more, well, who am I? Because now I've opened up, my DNA has opened up almost every country. And and now I want more now than I did before. I want more answers.
Including the infamous Moai, Easter Island.
Yeah, I have my DNA popped up on Easter Island too, which
Did it give you a percentage? She's got it.
I look at it all the time because it blows my mind how I found out that I have Native American from 3 different places, one of which is the supposed defunct Tainos from the Caribbean. So
how long ago did you do that? And I have a reason for the
been in the
question.
past.
within the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's been 5 or 6 years now since I did it. Of course, every time you look at it, it could change. And
Right.
When I first did it, there was like less than 1% Southeast Asia, and which was really odd to me that would, it makes you wonder, of course, and obviously she wondered, because there were so many different connections there. But then, 2 or 3 years later, that Asian part disappeared, less than 1%. And, I was kind of hopeful that I was more English or whatever, but, and it seemed I became more Scandinavian than English. And so it's always different. It doesn't mean that it's inaccurate, but I think, the technology that they use changes. So,
Yeah.
and obviously, there's different markers from different people, and the more, you know, the collection that they have, or whoever they are, that accumulates this information, changes over time. So you know, I think it's getting more dialed in and more accurate. So to me, that's an interesting thing, and how that changes. Me thinking, of course, that, you know, that with these changes, you know, there's a common denominator between more people, and they're dialing down these mixes to more specificity than they were prior. Even though I thought it was interesting before, because to me, I just felt that there was more of a relationship between people that wouldn't seem related as much, and especially geographically. But it's interesting. It's interesting. So
It is. To answer your question, it says 1%.
yeah, yeah. So how many different backgrounds did it break you down? I mean, you said you came from a lot of different
Yeah.
regions on the planet, and it's interesting because, I mean, some people really do, and I think I may have had, now maybe there's 6, but you know, some people have
It says here overall 20 ethnicities.
20.
Yes. Yeah, it kind of blew my mind. And it made me, I mean, I've always felt that everybody should be treated equally, regardless of your skin color or where you come from. And it makes me want to shout it from the rooftops that if just take your DNA, you'd be surprised. For example, my father and my grandfather actually were horrible bigots. They would constantly talk bad about anybody with dark skin, constantly made myself and my sister cringe all the time. I have more African blood in me than I ever thought I did. And I wish they were here so that I could show them to this and say, look, now you need to stop talking your crap.
Right.
Because it was horrible growing up listening to them.
My grandfather was like that too. Growing up with that.
Horrible. It was embarrassing.
I mean, fortunately, that doesn't really, I mean, yes, it does have something to do with who we are, but you know, at the root level, at the genetic level, it doesn't have anything to do with who we are, but of course what we learned along the way. But so what was the most interesting and maybe shocking thing to you, and as to your origin? I mean, is there anything that you just can't explain?
Yeah, there is. On my original 23andMe results, it said something to the effect of, hold on, because I was like, all right, well, what does that mean? Do I have alien DNA in me or something? I wouldn't be surprised. It says, hold on, come on, open. At the very bottom, it says 0.8% unassigned.
They haven't figured that part out yet.
So what does that mean?
That's the mailman, or some
Yeah.
several
What is that?
generations ago.
Unassigned. So how do you not? I mean, you have all this other information of all the other countries that my DNA is from. How do you have 0.8% unassigned?
Right. Right. And that's pretty common. Obviously I did ancestry.com, and that changes, but yeah, there's that question mark too. And unfortunately I can't see mine right now, but it doesn't really matter. But yeah, there was that. And so that really makes me wonder. And the thing that intrigues me the most about that is that that's really only what I care about. So every time I log in there, I want to see, and I don't do it very often, and I wait, 6 months. I want to see if that's changed, and I want to see what that is. I don't really care that I'm 26% Scandinavian. I want to know what that less than 5% is,
Yeah.
So did you both do this?
Yes, he did it too.
Yes. Mine was less
his was very less interesting. He's pretty much white across the board.
I'm like 80% smack dab in the middle of Europe, maybe something from the Mediterranean, and one lonely ancestor from the middle of Africa. So, and that was eons
Oh,
ago.
that's still all interesting though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's mostly European.
And less unspecified DNA that fell at the bottom of the centrifuge somewhere.
Yours has to say something. Where's your app? Let me have your phone.
The phone is gone. It's over in the living room. So
yeah, I
but
have to look at his. I don't remember what his says as far as the unassigned. That's an
I just remember looking at mine like, oh, this is boring. Okay. All right, where do we take this now?
Yeah, I don't know how much you spent on that, but I think mine was on sale, and I think it was like 79. It's normally 99 or whatever. But I would have loved to try the other websites just to compare.
Well, I took I did 23andMe. We both did 23andMe. So you can download your raw data and upload it to another, which is what I did. I uploaded it to Genomelink, and they were able to give me more. That's where I found the breakdown of the 20. It gave me more information than the 23andMe report, actually. So.
And it's interesting because it gets into a lot more stuff about your ancestry than Ancestry.com. Ancestry.com, if you use that, you got to have patience with that because it's actually seeking out concrete data by family relations,
Right.
whereas 23andMe and the Genomelink just bases it on your DNA, which goes a lot further. They don't care about family relations. So and there's really no way to bring those two together because Ancestry.com is basically.
Well, they have Ancestry.com has a DNA test
They
that
do.
you can do.
They do.
Is that what you did?
Yes, I
You
did.
the-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just went for the family tree on that. So, and
Which is quite taxing, especially if you
Well,
don't have any.
I ended up finding out
hints.
some things on one part of the family that I didn't want to know. So I was like, okay, let me call up Dad and talk to him about this.
Right. Yeah. There's that part of it. For sure.
But my dad's grandmother, my great grandmother, she was quite adventurous and kind of had relationships with many other men of different ethnicities and backgrounds, and so I was like, okay, so I don't know if that ever filtered into the family bloodline, but she got out there, she got around. So
well, you had asked me prior to the show if the F word was okay, and now you're kind of sugarcoating your story. The family tree. I'm not asking you to spill it, but
She spiced it up a little bit.
Spiced it, yes.
But people live differently, 400 years ago, and in 500 years in the future from now, they'll probably even live even more differently. So let me ask you this, because it's that unspecified DNA or relationship of your ancestry, and who knows what that means. But obviously you have all these companies that are selling this kit and collecting all this DNA, which of course people, we hear people all the time talk about privacy, and people don't want to get vaccinated, and they're worried about things in their bloodstream and altering DNA and things like that. Of course. So, so many of us are willing to throw our gene information or genetic information, online that just about anybody can look at to a degree. But what do you think about that unspecified part of our DNA and its relationship to each of us? Do you think that these companies have information on that we don't get to know about?
Yes, I
Yes,
do.
I do.
I think
What
ever
is,
since,
that's what I want. That's what
I honestly
Yeah.
think that they do have or have the ability to find out if we have DNA from other planets.
and
And I
think,
don't
yeah,
think that they want it out public yet.
but they want people to get used to it. So that when they see that small percentage of unassigned, they can start getting used to the idea that there's something that was sideloaded into the gene pool of the human race that doesn't necessarily belong here. And a lot of this, I think, was spurred on when during the Clinton administration, when President Clinton came out and gave a public address on how mapping the human genome had finally been completed. And now they were finding out certain things. And I think the unassigned coincides with that code phrase that the doctors and scientists like to use called junk DNA, which is not junk at all. It's just they can't explain why it's there.
No, they can explain why it's there. They're just not explaining it to us
Right.
right now, I think.
And now that term has gone away. You don't hear it as much anymore because people are getting more into Ancestry.com, 23andMe, Genomelink, and all that. And they're realizing, well, what's this unassigned part? That's not junk. That's coming from somewhere.
Mhm.
it is coming. So one of the things that I have learned in studying this a little bit is the fact that, there's DNA that has been collected from people who I don't know how far they go back, but obviously people have passed on, especially in the areas of the world that are frozen, where they're finding people and they're collecting DNA. So we get a little bit more information about, how we're related to those people that they may have found in Norway, Scandinavia, or wherever. So to me, if they were to look at our DNA and map out this unspecified portion, what are they comparing it to? What are the samples?
Yeah, I think they have ever since relations, foreign relations, alien relations started up in the 1950s, that they've definitely had a solid base to compare it to. Even Zacharias Hitchin, when he was alive, had pointed out that in our DNA, in our chromosomes, when you remove all the stuff that is human and primate or chimpanzee that we're related to, that there's still a certain fraction that is non-indigenous and does not come from Earth's gene pool. So even that research couldn't be refuted. And the fact that there's only, what is it, 1 or 2 chromosomes difference between us and a chimpanzee. Well, if we added a few more, if we could add a few more chromosomes to us, how different would we look at that point? We might look like one of the aliens. So the chromosomal structure in our DNA, there's really not much tweaking that needs to be done to make that leap to extraterrestrial. Yeah, there's such a close relationship there, and the ongoing dialogue that's been going on with certain exchange programs where some of them stay here and some of us go to their planet for several years, and then they come back and report on what it was like there, and the ones that were here go back to their planet. There's plenty of scientific information that's come out of that in terms of DNA and finding out and comparing it to this unassigned that you find on 23andMe or something like that. So I think this is their way, these companies who offer these family trees and DNA services, this is their way of getting people on board with the next phase of understanding that, well, you first have to get used to the idea that you have, just because you look white you have plenty of African, Asian, Arabian, and South American blood in you. And look at where your family tree goes. Now, if you can accept that without making a joke out of it or being in disbelief, then maybe you can handle what this unassigned is that we're presenting to you right now. And we'll explain that to you 30 years down the line.
God, I
Okay.
hope I don't have to wait 30 more
So-
years.
Well, these things happen in phases. So,
I know that.
yeah. And
And
takes
it's
a whole,
also happening quicker. I mean, technology
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
changes overnight, and we're learning things that we wouldn't have even imagined. And tomorrow morning we can look at the news or whatever. It's just, it changes everything.
No, it is changing, and we finally have the Vatican admitting that there's potential life out there. We have the government finally saying that yes, this, that, and the other thing happened. So hopefully that unassigned will finally come out and say, yes, we've been tracking all of your DNA, and this percentage is from Andromeda, that percentage is from the Pleiades, et cetera, et cetera.
I don't want to be from the Pleiades. But so let me ask you this. If they have, okay, everybody assumes that, or they don't assume, but one of the assumptions they do make is the fact that, or is the assumption that little bit of DNA or relationship to whatever else is out there is being kept secret from us because we can't handle it. Okay. Or for some other reason. What other reason
Right.
could there be? I don't really like that assumption that we can't handle it. I don't think that we can handle it, but could there be some other reason that this is being kept from us? I guess that's my question.
I'm sure there is, but they're probably researching maybe certain species from other planets have the ability to self-heal, or that group over there has the treatment for cancer for the other race that's over here. This could be umpteen different reasons why they're researching it right now and haven't told us.
individually, it's okay for us to look at it and say, hey, why are you treating me like that? I would understand, I would accept it. But I think a lot of us have to get our ego out of the way and realize those of us who understand it represent only 20% of the population. What about the other 80% that's still fighting over things like religion, white nationalism, the political climate we're in right now, with the nation being divided in half? And now you're going to introduce, well, now some of you are aliens. Well, how quick would it be to turn that into a racist agenda and stick everyone in District 13 like Timothy Jackson did in that movie? So, who's going to be sent to the concentration camp now? Who's going to be labeled with a brand new expanded definition of illegal alien? So these are all the ridiculous things that will crop up. And I know that kind of stupidity is hard for the smart people to comprehend when you're isolated and thinking about it in an objective, reasonable manner. But when you're in the crowd mentality, forget it. And that's the problem. We are still hinged on that ridiculous political crowd mentality of, well, this is my belief and this is the line in the sand I'm drawing. I'm not crossing it. And if you cross that line, I'm going to blow your brains out. Okay, fine. Well, then we can't talk to you and we can't tell you the truth if you're going to act irresponsible like that. And that's the broader scope of it. I mean, you and I can sit here and philosophize all day long why they're wrong for holding that information back. But you take a walk down the neighborhood and you realize, oh, that one looks like an asshole. That's an idiot. He's kicking the mailbox there because he can't get into the mailbox and get his mail. What message does that send to the aliens? How are you supposed to handle that you have alien DNA when you're beating the shit out of the mailbox just because you can't get your mail?
Yeah, why do people?
That's what you have to analyze. That's what you have to observe. You have to be observant of the human race around you. You cannot be so self-centered as to think, well, I'm the intelligent one. Why aren't they talking to me? Because you're a minority. Smart people are in the minority. Dumb people are in the majority. That's why we have the political climate we're in. And that's why the aliens say, screw it. We're going to wait another 50 years for these idiots to wise up. I hate it when people say, well, they talk to me. Great. That's good for you. Go puff up your ego somewhere else. You're a minority. Get lost. You don't represent the majority.
Do you ever think there's the decision being made out there for our benefit, so to speak, that somebody higher up in the who knows where looking at us and saying, you know what, there's a higher plane out there. There's a technology, and it far exceeds what we have. What could we possibly do for these organisms out there? And, you know, if we announce that, and if they find out our vulnerabilities, we're toast.
Yes, I think it's going to be a shock to the human race to find out that God is flesh and bone and bleeds just like us.
I would be shocked. So you're both writers, and
Yep.
you're both big thinkers. Do you always agree on everything? And if not,
No.
then that's interesting to me, because I mean, you're together and you're sharing the same space, but what do you disagree on as far as our origin and where we came from? I would like to hear about that, because, you know, those are good talking points, because if you live together and you're so set on that idea, that's important. Even if they're different, they're important.
Yeah, no. And I think the fact that we respect each other's differences for 26 years.
Yes, it's been a long time.
Yeah. What don't we agree upon? God, we spat every once in a while about that whole alien agenda thing. What was one specific one that we were back and forth about? I don't remember now. I mean, it's not a big deal to me. We say our differences and then we move on. So usually I don't remember them.
How I think the human race is not ready for this, and Linda thinks that we are.
Oh, yeah, I do.
We go back and forth about that. So
I think the majority of us have been so brainwashed since the 50s, maybe even late 40s, that, oh, we can't handle this, that, and the other thing, that we just assume, yeah, we can't handle it. But no, I think if you give the majority the benefit of the doubt and give all that information out, I think more people like Richard would be surprised. I think that they might be in shock about it, but I think that they would be okay with it.
And I feel that a bunch of nut job fanatics would turn it into a religious agenda and a political agenda.
You're always going to have that.
Yeah.
You're always going to have that. We have that
and
now.
Those are the people who created Hitler. Okay. All right. Those are the ones who created Idi Amin. Okay. Those are the ones who created every dictator since the beginning of time.
Yeah. And the Sata queens are not dictators?
Yes, they are.
All right, then.
So with information and how it's readily available to us, do you think that it's possible that wouldn't happen because we're more educated and we're not going to buy into that? I mean, it's possible that a percentage would, of course, but then
You're always going to have a group that's going to flip out and be stupid over something. But I think as a whole, now that there's more people aware, and there was something that I read recently that they did a survey, and there's more people out there that believe in alien life than not nowadays. So I think they've had enough time for it to stew, that if there was an announcement on the news or something tomorrow, that everybody would be a lot more okay with it than you think.
And my attitude would be, okay, what's their agenda behind releasing that truth? What are they trying to take advantage of? And what kind of false flag operation are they going to put forth? Oh, the aliens are coming. Oh, look, it's an invasion. Let's amp up the military budget and take over the country.
Well, yeah.
Martial law.
Yeah, that.
We need a new enemy all the time.
Yeah.
Terrorism has failed to produce the enemy. Okay.
Well,
There's no more Cold War.
It's been said that that's going to be the next false flag.
So the next false flag is an invasion from Mars, which the military already has a presence on.
I know that.
So, you know, it's just like, are people smart enough to know the difference? And no, they're not. how many false flags, including the World Trade Center disaster, have duped everyone into thinking
know.
we were attacked?
So events like that, do you think that what happened to us where we became so short? We have this short memory. I mean, it's, you know,
Yeah.
remember 9/11, everybody had their flag out and it was just like, yeah. And then not the next day, but days later, it was, we moved on. And there are these other big terrorist events, and we've been in wars, and we've you know, just pulled out of Afghanistan, and the president looks like a total whatever, but there's this memory that we have that just somehow we just move on, and once we get to that next thing, it becomes less and less of a big deal. Why is that? I mean, it's part of being human, I'm sure, but is it because we're totally bombarded with too much information?
That's possible. The internet was supposed to help us or create less work. I think it's created more work. You get more information, more crap thrown at you on a daily basis from every app that's out there. Everybody's got an opinion that this is fact. And I think everybody's, well, majority that I believe in are just like, yeah, whatever.
I've been kind of
I
on
don't-
hiatus because of whatever, for whatever reason, but and haven't produced many podcasts since July. But you know, thinking about that, and when I was going to start doing this again, and why, I just, one of the things that kept popping up is am I part of the fucking problem? You know, am I part of the reason why people have this weird short memory? And I know I do. It's not that I quit thinking about things, these bad things that have happened, because obviously 9/11 was a big event in my life, and I was stuck in the middle of America and couldn't get home and with my family. But um, you know, there are things that have happened that, you know, obviously my mind has moved on, and I don't want to think about it. And um, you know, on a daily basis, I have this potential of picking up my phone and being bombarded by all this shitty information. And I'm really tired, and I'm really tired of it. Um, I can't tell you how much I hate listening to the news in the morning, hearing about COVID, but
Right.
I mean, there are people out there who just can't get enough of it. And I've had enough of it.
I know. That's quite possibly what's happening to the majority is they're shutting down. They don't want to hear all this nonsense.
They get desensitized
Yeah.
from overload. And I think that's become an easy exclamation point to put at the end of a very long paragraph that started in the 1980s. When you go back to that generation of 50s, 60s, 70s, everybody had a much more expanded vocabulary. You get to the 80s, that vocabulary was still there, but it started being stunted down. You get through the 90s, less of a vocabulary. By the time you get to the year 2000, the population got so dumbed down by big pharma and drugs and antidepressants and then alcohol and street drugs that the gene pool became illiterate to the point of voting for George W. Bush. And that's how he gets into the White House, as an exclamation point on the stupidity of that generation that had come to the point of having a very stunted vocabulary that didn't even compare to the generation that came before it, which was much more intelligent and much more book read, much more able to verse in politics and economics. By the time you get to the year 2000, you try to talk to someone about that kind of stuff, it's just like, what was it? Dude, where's my car? Was the sum total of the discussion at that point. Okay. With those two idiots. But, and then as it goes from there, it just gets less and less to the point where you get this deer caught in the headlights look when you use a $50 word on somebody that's right in the dictionary. And it's like, did you look in the dictionary? No. Do you know what a dictionary is anymore? No. Well, they do have it online, but you don't even use it there. Why? Oh, I just don't care. you know, because you're too busy watching music videos that stunt you down. You're too busy speaking in a Twitter lingo, which
No,
is
it's-
ignorant.
We're past watching music videos. Now it's TikTok
Right, that's what I was
or
getting to.
YouTube influencers,
10
which they
seconds.
know.
It's the YouTube,
Huh?
it's the Twitter
It's
mentality.
10 seconds, you know, or a 30-second or 20-second
Yeah,
soundbite.
their attention span is about the size of a gnat, but they can spew out one influencer name after another, or the Kardashians or whatever else. Ask them the presidents in order, or ask them what president we have now, or who's the chief of staff, or who's the secretary.
Or how many planets are in
Or-
the solar
yeah,
system?
Ask them a fifth grade social studies
That
question,
varies.
and they'll
Ask them what the names of the planets are. Oh my God, I remember this dumbass in 8th grade. She couldn't even name the name of the planets. I was like, you're in 8th grade. And my science teacher is looking at her like, you don't know the names of the planets? How far did you make it this far?
I'm talking about the current situation.
Yeah.
The kids out there, if there's who was it? Is it Jimmy Kimmel? I don't remember who was out there asking questions. And these kids couldn't answer any of those questions,
Mhm.
but they knew who Kim Kardashian was, and they knew who Kanye West was, all those influencers out there.
Yeah, I'm hoping they showed us all the stuff that we wanted to see. I mean, obviously they're putting stuff on Jimmy Kimmel, whoever, Jimmy Fallon, putting things on that we want to see. It's not funny if they answer it correctly. So
Right.
there's a slant there, but let me ask. So yeah, everybody's part of the problem. Obviously, I mean,
Yes.
this is something that people are going to watch, but there's not going to be any editing here. I don't ever edit anything. You know, I'll take out some, you know, if we have a problem with the internet or whatever, and splice that back together. But you know, for the most part, you know, it's to keep it real, and people want to hear a real conversation. But one of the things that I wonder about, and how this came to be. I mean, obviously we're in, people will say a pandemic. I say it's an endemic, because it is. It's not going away ever, I don't think. I mean, obviously later on, years in the future, genetically, we could probably solve the problem. But how is this different than polio and smallpox and measles? You know,
Not.
and I believe that, but there are a lot of people out there who believe it's something different, and it causes
It
problems.
has to do with believing, yeah. Ella has to do with believing that history is based on a 10-year grading scale instead of looking at the last 1,000 years. You try to talk to someone about what happened 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and once again, glossy-eyed, deer caught in the headlights. You know, the younger generation thinks anything from last year is old.
There was
So-
some bad shit 50 years ago and 100 years ago. I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't trade now for that ever.
Mm-mm.
No, and that's the thing, that there's a disconnect there. And this, you know, interesting segue. This is why Linda and I are so focused on human origins, because we have a tremendous, horrid disconnect between modern society and ancient history, when we fail to comprehend that they're a mirror reflection of each other. There's nothing different about ancient history that's happening today, and history will always repeat itself for those who do not learn from it. If we think the invention of an iPad is something unique to the 21st century, we are seriously deluding ourselves, because that was here 10,000 years ago. If we think a laptop computer or a smart TV is something new, that's ridiculous. They had it 10,000 years ago. They had smoke glass buildings. They had fax machines, okay? It's in the architecture. It's carved into the walls. It's in the wall reliefs. You just have to know how to look for it. They had satellites up in space. The Moai of Easter Island are wearing Bluetooth devices on the ears, and these dumbass academics would have you think it's an earring or an ornament.
So that's a good segue to talk about what you both write about. Linda, talk about what you write about, and then of course we'll go to Richard, but why did you, how did that happen? I mean, talk about what you write about and how that happened and why is it important?
I actually fought Richard for like 2 years
Yes.
before I actually finally agreed to publish my book.
It's open.
That's something else we fight over too.
To me, it was something very personal for me. It was my mom's log, diary, journal, whatever you want to call it, of all of her sightings that she had had starting in December of 94. Then it was also my journal writings, experiences that happened with my ex-husband, my kids, my sister, myself, my parents. And somebody was looking through it one day and said, you should make this into a book. And I went, oh, hell no. No, that's airing dirty laundry, because growing up in the East Coast in New York, it's not a normal conversation to talk about UFOs and etc. I was made fun of. I didn't like it. So I moved to New Mexico 5 years ago, and it's like talking about what roll of toilet paper did you buy? Everybody talks about it. It's open. It's nothing. So I published the book finally after a lot of yelling and screaming between the two of us about it in 2017. It's 17 or 18,
yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, thank you so much for writing this, because now I don't feel like I'm crazy. Now I believe that my experiences that I had are real. Which shocked me, because I really didn't think anybody would read it. It's just all of our experiences. Well, not all of them. It's what I could remember and put into the book. My first memory started in 1967 when I was 3. And it has continued on to this day, and I'll be 58. Somebody was shocked the other day that I was still having experiences. It was Alan Steinfeld.
Right.
He was shocked that I was still having experiences. So
this is the question I ask all the time. It's because somehow I get connected with people like you because we're the same age. And
okay.
Some of those experiences are the same or whatever. But to me, it's interesting that so many people of the same age had so many similar experiences in the same years. So what is that? What is that? That's interesting to me, hugely interesting, because I meet people all the time. And if I meet somebody who's 55, 56 years old, what I want to ask them. I don't, but I mean, a total stranger or whatever. I don't
So
go.
have you had any alien experiences?
I don't.
And they look at you like, what?
Where the hell did that come from?
Yes, I know.
But
I know.
But
How about those Yankees?
So this guy, I met this guy the other day, and he was talking about, he was like 5 years older than me, but he was talking about being in Montana and being in the Air Force and working at these radar sites, early in his military career, And so I started to ask him, and what'd you see out there? Anything strange? And you wouldn't believe it. And I was like, okay, here we go. And these people would come up and they would try to, get in through the fence and but it only happened 2 times or whatever. And, I just kept prodding him and trying to direct the conversation, but it never ever went there. So sometimes I can't get there, but I don't really like to get into those conversations anymore, just because I've had plenty, but it's people are kind of on a different level. And I think, if I kind of can gauge where they grew up and, as long as it wasn't the big city, if they lived out in the country, we can find some common ground. But, it's the age and the years that happen. Why is that with that era of people?
I've heard other people say it was the first wave of maybe hybrid children here on Earth? What do you?
I can only speak from the perspective of being born in the 70s. So I was born in 1970, and I know that all those 70s babies came through and were born in that decade for a reason. And I didn't realize what that reason was until I had reached the age of 21.
Maybe we're the test group.
Probably.
The 60s babies are the
I
test.
mean, that would seem like a good answer. I mean, why not? You know?
Mhm.
Let's see how this group
Well, I know that
fits in on Earth, because they're not
what was
100%.
yeah, I know that what was coming out of the 60s was a huge impetus for these extraterrestrial groups to move forward and get those, as ridiculous as it sounds to say it this way, get those babies born in the 70s. So that by the time the 90s came along, they would be coming into their own. And in that decade of trial and tribulation known as the 90s, they would be able to take the reins of the 21st century.
Not if they're the bumbling idiots that you just said.
That's true.
We're not going there anymore.
Okay.
You know, one of the reasons, I kind of look at this in many different at many different angles of this, but sometimes I like to think that maybe we've been watched for a very long time, but then all of a sudden somebody new arrived, and
Mhm.
and I don't even like to say that we're particularly interesting, because a species that have maybe were star travelers that came billions and trillions of miles away, we're probably not that interesting. However, there is one thing that we probably, if they did travel a long ways, probably what would differ us from other organisms out there is the fact that, during the 70s, 60s, 70s, especially in the 80s, and then hugely into the 90s, it's the ownership of property. Like I always tell people, when I was a kid, we didn't drink water. We didn't have a backpack. We didn't bring anything to school, take anything home from school, when it got to high school, maybe some, your shorts, your shoes, whatever. But now, my son, he's 15. He has 3 backpacks and they're just loaded. He can hardly carry them. And I don't know what the hell is in there, and then he'll go to like a friend's house or his brother's house and he packs up his PlayStation and there's another backpack. And so there's this incredible, interest to me is like, all these kids own so much stuff. A lot of kids don't even own a bike now, but they own so many electronics. But the other thing too is, we had people on the planet who have amassed these huge herds of large animals and they're just slaughtering them and killing them and eating them. To me, that's, worth noting, and which probably makes us a lot different because, somebody who traveled here probably didn't have a herd of animals that they fed on along the way. It's got to be something, a light snack somehow, real light, but it's just that, we've become hugely interesting in the last, 45 years or so, and 50 years, and we're completely different. Things changed a lot, and we were right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
We're reaching a state of critical mass. That's why.
That too. And then, this population explosion is supposed to be 10 billion in 30 years from now or something like that. There's a critical mass and something's really going to change. It's going to lean one way or the other. And I can't see it being good.
It's going to force our hand to all that Black Ops, Secret Project, Area 51 stuff that's been going on with the Secret Space Program, the dark side of the moon, Mars, the asteroid belt, the moons of Jupiter, okay, all that stuff. this is how we start gradually getting used to knowing about that through unassigned DNA in our 23andMe. That's the first step. Second step will be, oh, population explosion. Well, now we got to do something about it. Well, now we got to go colonize the moon, Mars, and everything else under the sun to accommodate that growing population. Because no one wants to talk about culling the herd. So let's just go colonize something else. Now, that technology that has been happening illegitimately and behind the scenes with secret programs then gets handed off to corporations like Virgin Galactic and whatnot, or Tesla, and then it becomes legitimized because then it gets watered down into the commercial sector from the military. So that also gets us used to the corporations are inventing this new, world of the future for us, like the world of tomorrow that they had back in the 40s and 50s, all right, all that stuff. Well, now it's becoming true. And we're looking at it from the lens scope of, oh, we invented this, and all these smart people like Steve Jobs and whoever else has invented. No, they really didn't invent a damn thing. They just borrowed it from ancient history and then regurgitated it through the lens scope of what was funneled down from the military, and then fed it out to the public in a manner that looks pristine and new. And oh, look, we're going to go colonize Mars with our brand spanking new iPads. So, there's this watered down effect that gets us used to it and gets us more in line with accepting it until we finally peel that onion back far enough to look at the root of the onion and realize, oh, we've been part of this galactic family all along. This is nothing new. We are just simply revisiting Genesis. We are returning back to our roots. The problem is, like you said, you alluded to before, are we going the right path on that, or are we going on a self-destructive path? We're putting a lot of faith on the doorstep of corporations who are merely interested in money. So how safe is that colony going to be on Mars when they're going to cut corners to save expenses? How safe is that colony going to be on one of the biggest asteroids in the asteroid belt, or one of the moons of Jupiter? Like Ridley Scott says in the movie Alien, there's no sound in space. You can't scream in space. So if a colony is going to be lost, who's going to know? And this is the risk you take at putting yourself at the doorstep of a corporation who had it filtered down to them from a black ops military that's not even part of the legitimate US military. So, it's like, okay, we're getting conditioned to accept these things, but we're getting conditioned through a very corrupt and belligerent filter.
Richard, when you meet somebody for the first time and you tell them you're an author, they have no idea what you write about. I mean, how's that conversation go? What do you want? What do you want this person to know if you only had 45 seconds to talk to them? Because there's a lot there, and you throw out a lot of information on a lot of different subjects. Ultimately, it's kind of, I know where you're going and I know what that is, but how would you what would your annotated bibliography be for a total stranger?
How the ancient history of the human race relates to extraterrestrial contact. That's how I would describe it.
But not how not that though. But I mean, what do you want them to know? I mean, what's in there that just so important that you want, that it screams to you and you want them to hear about it? Something
Part
that
of what you put on human origins, something that you have to know where it came from.
Right. Yes. I have something I've written into one of my books. It's a quote I have on my biography. You have to know the ancient history of where you come from before you know the wisdom of where you're going in the near and distant future. You have to know your past to know your future, because it's an endless cycle. And if you don't know the past, then you're doomed to repeat all those horrid mistakes and end up back at square one again.
And we have a lot of authors out there who are taking this information from the past and this not even recent history, history from long ago, and providing some sort of interpretation. What's the real answer? What's the information out there that what should we be looking at and learning from? Because obviously there's a lot of people out there who've found information, whether it be archaeological, whatever, and there's some whacked interpretations. So what's your go-to? What makes you feel the most confident about the work that's out there? Does that make sense?
I know what I want to say, but
Say
I'm
it.
trying to be nice about it.
No,
So
we're not here to be nice.
okay. What
Keep it real, yeah.
just in plain old black and white, I would want people to realize that the biggest problem we have about our ancient history, our modern society, and comprehending what extraterrestrial contact really means is that we have corrupted that narrative with a strictly white, Eurocentric narrative on history. And until we learn to get that the hell out of the way, we're never going to get to the truth. You look at everything that they broadcast on those ancient aliens programs, it's all a white narrative. You look at everything that is put forth in ufology, it's all a white narrative. You look at the history books from academia, it's all Hoffman, what's the academic publisher, Hoffman Mifflin, whatever they call them.
Houghton Mifflin.
Yeah, it's all white narrative.
Right.
I mean, I even, in grade school and in college, I had teachers tell me, we're just focusing on the European perspective. The rest of it is not important. Really? Okay. Well, that European perspective is bullshit, top to bottom. Okay. I can rip the rug out from under it in 3 seconds flat. Okay. Because fact number one, Europe gets its false origin story from a manufactured and fabricated country known as Greece. When the truth of the matter is, there is no such thing as a Greek philosopher, never has been, never will be, because all Greek philosophers came from a very dark-skinned Egypt. So all philosophers are Egyptian, not Greek. Socrates is a prime example. He was Egyptian through and through, and his own Grecian people slaughtered him and poisoned him for it because they were afraid of him, because all of his knowledge came from Egypt. So once you start tearing down that first Lego block, all of European history falls flat on its face, because all of European history hedges its bets on Greece.
And I agree. I mean, even Christianity is really a white man's game. I mean, it's it would look vastly different if we had the real story somehow. And
yes, and I think that's the part where I start agreeing with Linda about releasing this, because if we want to bring this whole hateful white backlash to an end, then this stuff does need to be released. Come hell or high water, if we blow ourselves up, all right, fuck it, just release it. And if all the white people and all the Christians want to commit suicide, then let them, okay? Because they were the weakest link in the chain, and who the hell needs them? They didn't invent the light bulb. Thomas Edison, that's another Lego block I can knock down. Thomas Edison was a racist anti-Semite, and anyone who hates Hollywood really needs to get a grip on history, because if it wasn't for Thomas Edison, there'd be no such thing as Hollywood. Thomas Edison engaged in a blacklist program to marginalize all those second-generation Jews that were trying to get into the film industry as it originally existed on the East Coast of the United States. And because he blacklisted all of them, and made it impossible for them to get hired in the film industry, they said, screw it. You want to marginalize us? You want to blacklist us? Fine, we'll go out west. And they bought this little pissant town called Hollywood and turned it into what it is today. You want to piss and moan about Hollywood? Fine. Then I suggest you erase Thomas Edison from history. Second of all, he's a thief. He stole the original science fiction movie from a French director, From the Earth to the Moon, brought it over to the United States, and started promoting it as his own, made buco dollars off of promoting that film, and not one red cent ever went to the French director, and he died in poverty because everybody in France laughed at him. But over here in the United States, we ate it up. Wow, the first science fiction movie, From the Earth to the Moon, because it was done with a white guy, Thomas Edison. Third of all, he didn't invent the light bulb. The Egyptians did 5,000 years before that dumbass was even a glint in his father's eye. So God forbid we should give attribution to Black people, because the white guy has to be referred to as the father of invention. And I challenge you to go and say, okay, would we still call him the father of invention if he was 7 shades darker? Answer, no. That title would have gone to some other white guy, not Thomas Edison if he was 7 shades darker. And yet when you look at Black history, you find out it was a Black inventor who actually created the light bulb to give us light in our homes, regardless of what Edison might have contributed, okay? Fourth of all, he is a thug who went out of his way to destroy his own prime star student, Nikola Tesla, simply because of the dumbass mentality that would have freed the human race with alternate current, AC, as opposed to direct current, DC. Edison was all about DC. Why? Because the mentality was DC for Washington, DC, not AC. Nobody would be able to relate to it. So what does this sadistic idiot do? He goes out and electrocutes an elephant in front of everyone to try and prove how Tesla's tower would destroy the earth. And he made a complete fool of himself because all the news reporters were like, Edison, you are an idiot. Of course, if you electrocute an elephant, it's going to die, dumbass. So, you know, and to this day, you still find these so-called enlightened people who still worship at the altar of Thomas Edison because it's a white narrative. So this is what I'm talking about. Ufology, ancient aliens, all of that is corrupted by a strictly white narrative with no regard whatsoever for Native Africans, Native Americans, Native Arabians, Native Asians, and understanding it from their perspective. And I challenge people on that even in my lectures. I tell them, look, you're only listening to me because I'm white, but guess where I got it from? I got it from your dark-skinned elders, the one you laughed at because you were programmed and brainwashed to reject your own elders by white people like me who wanted to assimilate you into the white narrative so you could feel equal. But I got it from your Black elders, your dark-skinned elders. So if it's okay to get it from me, why aren't you listening to them? Because that's where I got it from. And then they have to think about that. Same thing with women. We have a misogynistic narrative on this planet that completely obliterates women from the conversation. I don't give a damn what the hell kind of progress has been made or what you can point to figure, oh, women are much better now. The fact that you have to say that says we haven't made progress. If you have to point it out, then you haven't made progress because the only reason you're going to point it out is because you are guilty as charged, okay? So the fact that we have this culture of rape in our democracy against women who serve as the foundation of the real power of ancient history makes it quite clear that there is an extraterrestrial agenda against the female principle and the feminine goddess energy. I'm not talking about the benevolent factions like the Star Nations or the Ponti or whatever, or the Zeta Reticuli. I'm talking about these scumbags from the Orion Empire who see women as a threat since ancient times. Since ancient history, the Greys have always seen the female principle, the real power, the feminine goddess energy, as an absolute adversary that they could never control or dominate. And so what do? They turn men into the idiots who dominate the women as a middleman. And by fear and paranoia, they destroyed the woman's psychic ability by making her terrified of her husband, her brother, and her father, and forced her to her knees in fear and obedience. That's a fact. And there's not one feminist out there who would argue against that. That's a known fact about history. And that came straight out of a more malevolent faction that sees the human race as nothing more than a social security number that can be replaced. So now you have this groundswell, this vibrant, voracious groundswell of the female principle and the feminine goddess energy now taking its rightful place in the 21st century, right alongside people of color finally being recognized for the truth that they represent. And all of a sudden, the white narrative is lost and doesn't know how to handle that, because the white narrative has always been at the top of a very false pedestal. And now the white narrative has to get its ass booted out of the way to make room for the truth and stop giving it through a false lens scope of whitewashing, white power, white nationalism, white supremacy, white corporations, white bread, white sugar, white flour, white salt. Okay. I name it that way because even in the health industry, it is understood as a fundamental law that anything that's white is evil to the human body. White flour, white sugar, white salt, white bread, all evil to the immune system. Big Pharma knows that, and they've gone after the human system lock, stock, and barrel to dumb us down, because to attack the human body is to attack our ancient legacy and remove us from the scenario. Okay, so this is what's going on here. We have a terrible, terrible 10,000 years or more of bad behavior, and it's very hard to break that habit when you are so used to being the white guy at the top of the pyramid of power.
I agree. And one of the things that struck me is the fact that you know, we could admit that. I want to talk about women in general, that, you know, we can't live without them, but you know, there's such a disparity of treatment and poor treatment, and you know, the probably the strongest, for sure, the strongest member of our weird society, and how that happened and the history of that is, you know, you look at it in a way that you know, what's the equalizer? I mean, we've never been able to find that, and it's not only are we fighting ourselves, but we're fighting amongst our own race and against women, and it's hard to find a way to fix that. I mean, it's like we look at war in the Middle East and how that could never resolve itself, but you know, we're fighting this, not even a mini war, a major war amongst men and women every day, and it's I don't know.
Right, and the actual, just like Greece, the very reference to something being called the Middle East is a figment of the imagination. That was another social experiment that was invented by the European colonizers, who went down there and created all these different illegitimate borders and nation states that didn't exist beforehand. And by forcing those people into those containers, this began the friction. Nowadays, we look at it as, oh, Jew versus Muslim, Muslim versus Jew. No, that's a white narrative via colonization. And this is the mess that Europe left behind. And now it's like, well, why doesn't the United States fix this? Well, what's the United States going to do? We're dealing with our own mess as a colonized nation.
For
So,
sure.
so how are we supposed to lecture the Middle East when we are still coming out of the bigoted mentality of 13 colonies, 13 slave colonies at that, which weren't supposed to be here and were only placed here illegitimately to replace something else that had a legitimate reason to be here in the first place. And we're not just talking about Native Americans, we're talking about the entire scope of what I talk about in my books called the Moorish Legacy, which includes Native America. So that's the other aspect too. The Moorish Legacy represents the Christ energy, and the female principle represents the real power. And those two things go hand in hand. And the original political power couples that represented that were people like Isis and Osiris, Jesus and Mary Magdalene, okay? Those were political power couples who represented the combination of the Vril and the Christ. And the Vril, the woman, carried all the political power. And the Christ carried the message. He was the teacher. And the only reason his head remained attached to his body was because the woman had his back. You see this in ancient Egypt. Once again, this is the difference between a white narrative and the truth. When you look at an Egyptian statue of a female, she'll be standing there, and it looks like on the surface, from a male misogynistic point of view, that she is behind the man, but she's not. She is presenting the man in front of her with her hand on his shoulder, as if to say, this is who I've chosen to be my mate, because she's the one in charge. Goes back to the old phrase, behind every good man is a greater woman or a better woman. And that is an Egyptian understanding, because Egypt was a matriarchy.
So was Native American.
Native Americans, clan mothers, matriarchy, okay? The only reason that fell out of sway was because of that agenda to go out there and destroy on purpose via the mandates of the Greys, to destroy anything that's 7 shades darker and anything that takes orders from a female. That was immediately labeled as, that's not Christian. You must listen to your man. Well, excuse me, but the last time I checked, when you look at a household that's run by a man, it's upside down and dysfunctional. The only type of order you have is a house run by the woman.
Yeah, absolutely. We got like 2 minutes, and I kind of want to know what you got planned next, because it's interesting to me. And Linda, you kind of alluded to the fact that you wrote about your life, but there's more. Give us a hint.
Richard and I created the Human Origins Foundation back in 2017.
Yeah.
It started out as the UFO Global Initiative with Richard by himself, doing it with somebody from Australia, I think it was, or something.
Yeah.
And that didn't pan out. And then when I moved here to New Mexico, he was talking about this whole global initiative to get the word out about alien contact, the human origins and forgotten knowledge, ancient history. And I said, look, I have large event experience. You have the information, you know who to get together. Let's just put this all together. Let's do a conference. And the first Human Origins Conference was 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And then
and it received a lot of great feedback, and people wanted more. And we're like, okay,
then COVID hit and we didn't have the next one. We had what?
It's 2019 into 2020. That all just got sandbagged.
So our next one is in May of 2022, and we have, I don't even know, 12, 14 speakers for the Human Origins Conference.
13, magic number 13.
Albuquerque. And we have the foundation is what runs the whole thing.
People can go to humanoriginsconference.com.
Mm-hmm.
Go get your tickets. They're on the early bird special now until December.
And all the speakers are listed there, everything.
Yes, you have all the speakers. Our newest one, our last one to come on board was Dr. Rita Louise.
Mm-hmm.
But we have an excellent lineup, including
Dr. Robert Schock.
Dr. Robert Schock, Brooks Agnew, George Haas,
Cynthia Martinell, Nyla Gilliam, Dr. Nyla Gilliam.
Right.
We have a lot of
Vivian Chauvette.
Yes, Vivian Chauvette.
And many others. So just go to the website and take a look at it. I have to update the speakers page to include Dr. Louise, because she just recently filled that 13th gap. But don't miss out on if anybody wants to know more about Linda and myself, Our official website is ufoteacher.com.
Awesome. So, Richard, is there another, the more the Mason and the alien in
There
store?
is. I'm trying to get Linda to get going on a second book for herself here. She's got lots of ideas and is trying to collate them into something. But for myself, I'm working on right now the fourth book in the series, The More the Mason Alien Part 3, Rise of the Invisible College. So, and it's going to talk about the power of the Invisible College with that Moorish, Masonic, and alien symbolism that runs through it, and how it's been, once again, just like 23andMe, you know, these movies that educate the human race to get used to certain ideas. Hopefully it'll be received well as part 3. So
All the others.
Sure will. All right. Richard and Linda Smith are both students of human origin. And other than ufoteacher.com, where else do they look for you online?
HumanOriginsConference.com.
Oh, yeah. And of course, we're on Facebook and Twitter and
Yeah.
Instagram. So they can find us on there too.
Yeah.
They're
everywhere.
Yeah, that's good.
And then YouTube and my website.
YouTube,
Yes.
LinkedIn. Yeah.
So
I'm on TikTok too, but I don't have my name on there.
you actually produce TikTok videos. All right.
Yes, I do.
Richard, Linda Smith, saying thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As always, check out the podcast at myalienlifepodcast.com. The music heard on tonight's program is by Elion. You can find all Elion's music on Heart Dance Records. And tonight's audio video engineer and producer is Cassidy Lightwing. I'm Cam Logan. Be sure to listen to previous shows available everywhere you hear fine podcasts. And thanks, everybody. Good night.